G'day you beautiful people, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be doing a little bit of a look at all the heroes in the game and what positions they fill. Now, before we get started, keep in mind that I'm going to initially be going over what these characters were sort of released as. Like, take for instance the fact that Muriel is a support. Some people, I realize, are running her offlane at the moment and getting a bit of a success. Chimera was released as a jungler. He is a jungler. People are running him offlane and getting a bit of success. We're going to be talking about sort of what they were released as, and I will elaborate on sort of what people are able to do as well. But we're going to, as I said, just start off with what they're intended for. So first up, we're going to start with supports. The supports in the game are FaZe, Steel, Narbash, Deca, Muriel, and Richter. For the most part, it is the job of a support to keep their carry alive in the early game, keep them safe, keep them warded so that they can farm. As a support, you will not be going for last hits, especially in the first 10 to 15 minutes of the game during the laning phase. It is more so your job to make sure that your carry can farm and make sure that they don't die. At a certain point during the game, it is going to be necessary for you to rotate to help other teammates. You are not just the carry's support, you are the team support. I see a lot of hate in games because 25 minutes in, the support went mid lane or off lane to help a push while a carry was farming a wave that was in front of a tier 2. They were sitting there, they were safe, there was wards out. They went and rotated to help their team, and the carry somehow died even though they had complete night vision of anyone coming to get them, and they get flamed because they weren't there. You have to remember that a support's job is to support the team. Yes, at the start of the game they need to predominantly protect the carry, but they are there to support the whole team, not just the carry. As far as building for a support goes, the main way that you want to build is things that are going to increase your mana pool and your mana regen. If you are a mana hungry support like a Deca, a FaZe, a Muriel, a Narbash, perhaps even a Richter, you will also want to sort of build a little bit tanky. Getting some extra health, getting some extra armor, especially if you are someone like Steel or Narbash or Richter. But for the most part, it's just going to be utility items that help your team. Utility items are things like wards. It's a little bit weird now, but stasis, stuff like that. Anything that can increase your healing rate. If you're someone like FaZe or Narbash, their job is to sort of try and heal the person that they are with, so things like Vital Waters in growth will definitely help you do your job. Next up we have carries, or the ADC, which is attack damage carry. So this is a bit weird. They're not in the greatest spot right now. A lot of people don't even take carries as part of their team, and the positioning of these heroes is a little bit whack at the moment. So you have Wukong, Revenant, Yin, Seraph, Murdoch, Sparrow, Grim, and Twin Blast. These are all carries. They have very, very high damage output, relatively low health. Their job is to do a lot of damage in teamfights, and they need to be peeled for. They need to have people looking out for them. Peeling is where you remove threats from a person. So let's just say you're playing Grux. You need to, and you were the only sort of tank on the team, you had the only form of CC on the team, and you had a Murdoch with you in a team fight. If someone jumps on him, it's your job to peel them off him, to pull them off him, which in turn is peeling them off him. Now, as far as positioning goes on carries, I have a point of view that is not necessarily the the general point of view, that carries in the safe lane should mostly be the ranged carries. I don't really like taking melee carries into the safe lane. because of a lot of things. They aren't able to poke the offlaner. They aren't able to safely farm from a distance. It's a little bit harder for them to get tower damage early on because they have to travel further into the tower and travel further to get out of the tower. Stuff like that, which leaves them open more easily to ganks. But they are a little bit more mobile. Maybe not quite the case with Yin. But Seraph and Wukong definitely are a lot more mobile, so they can get away with it. They definitely can safe lane. I'm not saying that they shouldn't safe lane or can't safe lane. It is just my general rule of thumb that I don't like to take them there. Wukong, Yin and Seraph have, since their releases, all proved themselves to be better in the off lane than they are in safe lane. Especially Wukong and Seraph. Yin can still very much hold her own, especially considering she can knock back a stun. The other guys are definitely ones you're going to definitely want to take into the safe lane. Things have been switched up a lot now. Revenant and Grim are being taken mid, especially Grim. Grim can do very well in mid, building as a caster. This is something that you couldn't typically do too well in pre-version 42, but you definitely can now. As far as building goes for a carry, you want to be focusing on damage, shields, lifesteal, things that allow you to do high amounts of damage, and things that allow you to sustain through your damage output. So lifesteal definitely fits into that. Generally when you're building lifesteal onto a build, you're building damage and attack speed as well, which allows you to steal more life as you attack. When you are taking into consideration someone like Grim or Revenant, they are much more ability driven, especially now. You want to build things that maybe increase your mana pool on someone like Grim and allow you to do more ability damage so that you can spam that ultimate. Revenant is the same way as well. Revenant is the only hero in the game that does not have a standard attack speed. He is not really affected by attack speed. The attack speed that you apply to your build increases his reload speed. And considering the fact that he has a revolver, you need to rely on high amounts of damage per shot. So you kind of want to build anything that gives you a very, very high amount of per shot damage. Next up we have junglers, and this is another section of heroes that is a little bit out of whack right now. But the junglers are Crunch, Kwong, Chimera, Severog, Rampage, Grux, and Feng Mao. Now, there is pretty much anyone is able to jungle at the moment. Jungle creeps don't typically hit very hard, and considering the fact that anyone can apply a jungle lifesteal gem to their build and cards that can help them sustain in the jungle, it's pretty much anyone can jungle right now. Some other people that can jungle really, really well are people like Wukong, Seraph, as far as carries go. People like Greystone can do okay. They're not typically preferred as junglers because they don't really have the gank potential. When you pick a jungler, generally what people want from a jungler is someone that can clear pretty well and sustain pretty well. They can move into a lane for a gank, which is when you sort of enter a lane and attack from the rear and kill someone. They won't have lockdown on these heroes. So people like Rampage have a stun with their boulder, so they can stun someone. Crunch can knock people up. Kwong can tether people. Grux can pull and stun. Feng Mao doesn't typically have any form of CC in his kit, but he is still a pretty decent jungler. Chimera and Severog are obviously very good at locking people down. That is what they do. But there are still a lot of people, as I said, that can jungle really well. Kalari and Countess as well, very good at jungling. Aurora is a very good jungler right now. Typically what you want to do as a jungler is your job to try and clear your camps as quickly as you possibly can. You want to make sure that you're always rotating for river buffs at 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 7 minutes, etc, etc. You are helping people try to get kills in lanes. When the enemy team is pushed up too far, you want to take over and defend a lane for a short amount of time while that laner backs and gets their strength back up. or purchases cards. Pretty much you're a designated sort of support in a way, but you're also a bit of a damage dealer at the same time. When it comes to building for junglers, it is sort of, especially for all these guys that are on the screen right now, it is kind of the thing that just grab Godmother and Godmother alone, but that will be changing soon. Typically what you want to do is you want to have a lot of cards that help you sustain while you're in the jungle, a lot of health regen, things like jungle lifesteal on your gems, anything like that, anything that helps you stack up health and power. Flame of Zekken, which I believe is also going to be changed at some point. There's many different options, but generally it is preferred that junglers end up quite tanky, so they have a lot of health and armor and stuff like that instead of just pure damage. Now moving on to the group that on face value sort of seems like the biggest group of heroes, but it's not actually the biggest group of heroes, is the mid laner. Now mid laners are people like Morigesh, Shinbi, Countess, Lieutenant Bellica, Wraith, Gideon, Gadget, the Fae, Howitzer, and Iggy and Scorch. We will go on to in a moment in the offlaners, and we'll talk about how a lot of these people can offlane quite well as well. But generally it is the job of the mid laner to be very good at holding their towers. If you're going to take mid lane, you need to be really good at defending your tower and keeping an eye on where waves are, because the mid lane is the most important lane. It is the closest distance between 2 points on the map, because it is more of a straight line. The offlane and safe lane kind of bend around, making them a little bit longer. So the easiest way for the enemy team to actually get to your core is the quickest route, which is through mid lane. Another job of the mid laner is to make sure that they attempt to secure all river buffs, which is obviously going to be very good for them because they are pretty much all mana hungry characters, and also to rotate to get kills. Having your mid lane caster rotate over to the safe lane or the off lane to try and secure kills along with the jungler increases your chance of actually getting those kills, which is feeding your team and helping your team out. So don't just sit in mid lane. As a mid laner, it is extremely important that you make sure that you're on top of your calls. Everyone should call when someone leaves their lane. So if you're in safe lane as the carrier and you're there on your own and the Wukong leaves, you should call that they've left. They're probably just going to farm, but it is important that you call it. But as the mid laner, it is extremely important that you make sure that you call when people leave. And the opposite side to that, it is extremely important that everyone else calls that people are missing from their lanes, because they're probably going to kill the mid laner. So you need to be on top of those calls. On that same topic, when your enemy mid laner does leave mid lane and you know that they're going to rotate over to get some kills, it's pretty important that you try to push your wave as quickly as you can and rotate over to help. A lot of times you will see that your mid laner calls enemy missing mid and they are pushing the wave onto a tower and doing tiny amounts of tower damage while you will get killed in off lane or safe lane. That's not helping your team whatsoever. Just push that wave, get it to push itself and rotate over, because obviously the enemy team has the numbers advantage because their mid laner has rotated over, and your team needs you to give them a hand as well. As far as building for these mid lane casters, there are a lot of different ways you can go about building. Obviously, this is a pretty varied group of heroes. Not quite so much as the offlaners, as you'll see in a minute, but generally going into mana regen, some extra health, things that are going to increase your damage output with abilities like ability penetration, or say 10% extra ability damage. Things like that are going to help you out quite a lot. But looking at this group of people, there are a couple here that are actually exceptionally good at supporting. namely Belka and the Fae. Wraith as well is pretty decent as a support. You could pretty much right now, with the state of the game, you can take anyone anywhere and potentially do well, but the Fae and Lieutenant Belka especially, and Wraith are actually considered to be pseudo supports, which simply means that they're not brought out to specifically be a support, but they're extremely good at it. Now moving on to offlaners. Now this may seem like a deceptively small group of heroes. There is only 3 that I'm showing you right now, but these are heroes that were the list is not so small just because there are only 3 offlaners. These are heroes that I believe were meant to be offlaners, but the list is not as small as what it actually seems, because a general rule of thumb is that anyone that can mid lane can offlane. So what that means is that this list of offlaners is not just 3 heroes. There is actually, as well as these heroes, Morrigat, Shimby, Countess, Belka, Wraith, Gideon, Gadget, the Fae, Howitzer, Anigi, and Scorch. On top of that, like we already discussed, Wukong, Ian, Seraph from the carries can offlane as well. Muriel is doing quite well at offlaning also. We also have Crunch, Kwong, Fengmao, Rampage, Severog, Chimera. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is that there are quite a lot of people that can actually offlane. As I said, the general rule of thumb is that anyone that can mid lane can offlane, but just because someone can offlane doesn't mean they can take mid lane. Okay, so Aurora, Kalari, and Greystone are the only people I have listed as actual offlaners, but as I just said, there are more people that can go to this lane. If you are taking someone from the other lists that we already mentioned, I would still build them around about the same way that we talked about, but just with a little bit of extra sort of health regen and stuff towards the start of the game. You would end up building them the same way for endgame though. These 3 heroes here are quite good at holding the offlane. You might need to be a little bit more careful with someone like Kalari being a bit squishy, but they can definitely do their job. It is predominantly the job of the offlaner to hold their tower as long as humanly possible. At some point that tower is going to go down, that tier 1 tower is going to go down, and your team is better off having that tower be destroyed rather than you die several times. So never try to save it if it's going to mean your life. It's not that important. Apart from that, it is your job to make sure that you have the offlane pushing as hard as possible all the time. Having pressure on that offlane allows your team to do better in other lanes, because there's not going to be it's very, very hard for a team to push when there's pressure on one side of the map. On their side of the map, they're going to have to go and defend, which means that there's a player missing out of team fights. So if you push a wave and then rotate to team fights, most of the times you'll be in a 5v4. So just focus on trying to defend as best as you can, and then pushing your wave as far as you can, as safely as you can, and help in team fights wherever you can. Now when it comes to building offlaners, as I said, with everyone else, you're going to build the exact way that you would normally. With these 3 here, they're all built quite differently. Kalari, you're going to want to build high amounts of per shot damage. Greystone, you're going to be wanting to build extra health and armor. I apologize for the screaming in the background if you can hear that. And Aurora can be built in multitude of different ways, but that is all the heroes in the game, guys, and their positions that they were either brought out for, or the ones that I deem them to be best suited to. As I said, there's a lot of different things that sort of switch up the generalization of where they go, and version 42 has also switched that up quite a bit. So don't be afraid to experiment, but at least you have a general list of where they go and what they're supposed to do. But that is it for today, guys. So I hope you found that helpful in some way, shape or form. If you have any differences of opinion, or you feel that I've left something out, please leave it in the comment section down below so people can read it. Leave me a like if you enjoyed the video, dislike if you disliked it, and subscribe for more Paragon content. But with that said, thank you so much for watching. I love your face, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.